Tonight we're going to start with a little presentation. Community Patel and myself were lucky enough this past week, I guess it was last week, to meet with Atlantic Coast Recycling, and in the spirit of helping to educate the town on just things that I think are real important, talking about, communities, what they can do, to make the world a better place going forward. I thought that this was a presentation worth discussing. So I'd like to bring the representatives from Atlantic Coast up to talk a little bit about what they're talking to us about. Please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is John Stanton, and that's Harv Strauss. We're from Atlantic Coast Recycling. What we're going to talk about tonight is recycling in Monmouth County, recycling in the world, and what...
Hey, yeah, I think if you want to use the mic, feel free. That way, we got a couple guys in the back that might be hard of hearing.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, they can.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. All right, so that's it. First we're going to talk about what's going on in Monmouth County. What is the county doing about recycling? All you guys have heard about the problems in recycling, I'm sure, correct? Raise your hands if you haven't heard about it. Everyone's heard about it, okay. What are the issues with the recycling markets? What are single stream issues with the recyclables that residents put out as the curb? And if we have a chance, there's a little 3-minute video about recycling, or if not, we'll just skip that. All right, but before we start, I want to ask a question to everybody. And you don't have to say the answer, but just think about it. What is unique about Monmouth County and Class A recycling, which is curbside recycling? I'll wait a second while everyone's thinking of their answer. Okay, you ready? Monmouth County is the largest and only one of 2 counties in New Jersey that doesn't have a processing center to process recyclables. Here's a chart of all the facilities that have it. It's only Monmouth and Hunterdon. In Hunterdon, there's like 12 people that live in it, so a heck of a lot more in Monmouth County. So what difference does it make if there's a processing facility in Monmouth County or not? Well, the average charge, because there's charges for recycling now because of what's happening in China. If you're in a county that has a processing facility, the average charge is about 60, 70 bucks per ton. But Monmouth County, we're at $100 to $135 per ton. That's what the municipalities are paying for the recyclables you put at the curb. That's more than the cost of trash. So if we look at this and extrapolate this out for a year, there's about 100,000, 120,000 tons, let's say, of recyclables in Monmouth County. That equates to between $10 and $13 million a year that's being spent to recycle. So why does it cost so much in Monmouth County? All the recyclables are shipped out of county because there is no processing, like I said. Everything is shipped out. Now, if you look, we just took some pictures. A truck comes in. This one happens to be from Wall Township. It dumps the recyclables at the Reclamation Center in Tinton Falls. Then we have a loader, piles it up. Then they take that loader, they fill it with the recyclables. It goes in a tractor trailer. And it brings to one of these places. Our 2 facilities, where we have 2 in Passaic and 1 in Lakewood. Republic has 1 in Mount Mine Hill and 1 in Camden. And Freehold Cartage brings it to us in Passaic. And one other company, Mazda, brings it to Newark Waste Management. It's awful far away from Monmouth County, all these locations. And the other problem is, the average cost of a truck to bring it there is $400. So you can just do the math. If I only have 5 tons in that truck, it's costing me $80 a ton. If I have 10 tons, it's costing me $40 a ton, and so forth, just to move the recyclables up north. There's also an environmental cost. Because if you just take 1 trailer that goes out with 10 tons average, every truck that goes out is going to have a 20% or 1/5 of a metric ton of CO2. Methane, 22.4 grams, and nitrous oxide, 251 point, what is it, I can't even read. 251 grams. If you again extrapolate it out, take 100,000 tons a year, divide by a 10 average, that's 10,000 trucks. Multiply this number times 10, 10,000. So, what's the county doing about this to solve the problems? Well, the county issued an RFI, which is Request for Information, in January 2015, and they asked, if we had a building at the reclamation center at the landfill, what would you do with it? 2 years later, in November 17, they issued an RFQ based on those RFIs. Say, okay, you have it. Who's qualified to build a great recycling facility? 4 people submitted bids to the county. And then in September of 18, a year later, we were the successful bidder, Atlantic Coast Recycling. So, what did we propose to the county? We proposed an investment of $25 million capital. No investment by the county, and 80 to 100 new jobs. This is typically what a recycling facility would look like, not what we're putting up. This is smaller. We'd be about 3 times as big as this. This is an artist's rendition of what the facility would look like. If you look at that, that's the recycling facility. That's a brand new building that would be built. This here is an existing building that's there at the county. That's what we're talking about putting up. We've always believed in public-private partnerships with all the towns and municipalities. And part of our deal with the county is 80 to 85% of all the revenues from the recyclables goes back to the towns to save the money. Holmdel Township, as we were talking about when we met with the mayor, would save 40% on their current single stream cost. That's a pretty substantial savings. We put up an education center where the children can come and organizations can come to see how recycling really works. We're going to put up a viewing area with glass so people can walk all around the recycling facility and they can see in it. You can see the kids. The reflections are in the glass looking down at the facility. But what is the issue today with recyclables? China is the world's largest market for recyclables. They get about 65–70% of all the recyclables throughout the world. Now, you guys ever hear there's a trade war between the United States and Canada? Anyone hear that?
China.
I'm sorry, China. Yeah, we almost had one with Canada, though. All right, well, because of that, China is no longer accepting paper from the United States. There's an issue with that. And there's no place for it to go. And you can see from this chart here that looking up there, there's the United States in dark blue. And all the other countries, in red is China. That's for the rest of the world. That's where the materials go, or used to go. But, you know, China started this even before the trade war. If any of you have Amazon, there's a documentary called Plastic China. And President Z, is that how you say it? Xi? How do you say it? G? President Xi. All right. When he saw this, he was very upset. This is only a few seconds of it. When the president of China saw this, he said, no more. No more plastic comes to China. We are not the dumping grounds of the world. And that's why the quality issues are more important than ever in recyclables. During his annual Communist Party Congress, it's called, he mentioned the environment 89 times. He only mentioned the economy 70. It's not many times. And you can see contamination levels. If you look previously, Prior to 2012, we had 5% contamination was allowed in the materials that went to China. When I say we, that's the industry we're talking about. Today, it's less than 0.5%. It's a big change. It's almost impossible to achieve with what comes in. Has it affected the pricing of recyclables? Every time the pricing of recyclables changes, that affects you as residents. It affects the township because there's less revenue coming in or there's a higher expense. I did all the screaming in that. Because you can see pricing from 17 to 18, it's a 47% decline in the value of recyclables. Today, a ton of single stream is worth about $40 after you process it. And it costs about $85 to $90 to process. So, what issues do we have? Can't sort the same as we did previously. We try to clean up the best we can, higher expenses, slower production. All the contamination has to be pulled. And moisture, I don't know if you know it rains in New Jersey, they don't want any moisture, so we're not sure how we stop that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to quickly go through some pictures of trucks that dump recyclables so you can see what's in it. That's a pool hose. This is all in one day, just from a couple trucks, all plastic bags. And you were talking about plastic bags when we met, right? This is one of the issues, how many plastic bags we get in. I'm not sure what that is. Is that? Yeah, it looks, it's garden stuff or something like that? Yeah. A lot of polystyrene. Someone was talking about polystyrene, styrofoam coming in. Obviously, they thought that vinyl siding is plastic, so that can go in the recyclables. There's buckets, there's baskets. There's some more yard waste. Some more polystyrene. There's a cage of some sort. Buckets. More yard waste. There's an ice, to make ice. Some car seats or whatever those things are, some cushions. More siding. So, what can we do to help? We meaning, as a town, you have to educate the crews. You only pick up clean recyclables at the curb. You have to educate the public constantly. One of the things that I want to say is we visit a lot of towns. I've been doing this for, what is it, like 110 years now, I think? Something like that? Close to that, yeah. Holmdel has been more progressive and forward-thinking in recycling than most of the towns, to be honest, that we visit, I have to tell you. They want to do a better job, and that's one of the reasons why they asked to show this. And we are trying to help any way that we can for that reason.
If only the homeowner had put the lid on their garbage container.
All right, should I ask if any other questions?
Does anybody have any questions? So, I guess in this, please. Scott?
I have a question about water on paper goods.
Mm-hmm.
When they process paper, my understanding is they chop it up and then they put it into water baths. Okay.
Yeah, they actually don't chop it up. All they do is they just dump it in a vat. And there's two types of, if we talk about news for a second, okay, just use
Make
that
it simple,
as an
yeah.
example, same thing. So with these two different types, one's called flotation de-inking and the other's called washing de-inking. Flotation de-inking, they put the paper in, they want magazines, and the clay in the magazines floats the ink out. Washing de-inking, it's like a blender with washing, and they just keep churning it up. The pulp, the fibers break down, and the ink just washes out. So you say, why do they not want moisture?
Yeah.
Because it gets on a ship, it's baled, and it takes 3 months to get over to China or elsewhere. All that moisture becomes mold. Number one. Number two, they don't want to pay for moisture.
Okay.
Because they're paying for it. And number three is when you're sorting, if you have newspapers or cardboard stuck together, you ever try to separate a sheet of newspaper that's stuck to another sheet of newspaper? You can't do it. They break apart. It just rips. And so when you have contamination, you can't see what's in between the wet paper. So we have no way of pulling it out. That means there's more contamination in it. And so China and Indonesia and all the other countries in the world are rejecting because of that.
So hopefully, this is, and I appreciate, thank you so much for the presentation. I think companies want to make an investment in our community. Hopefully, just remind all of us that continue to do the right thing with recycling. Hopefully, we'll have an infrastructure right here in Monmouth County that reduces the wear and tear on all our roads, and we're not carrying the garbage all over the state, and we can have an efficient way to do it. So I thank you guys for coming out and presenting. I think it's going to be a real big plug for the county. Okay, moving along. Before we do consent agenda, I'm going to turn it over to legal.
If you want to ask, if any residents want to do anything, they should write to freeholders and say, move this along.
Move this along is what the gentleman is asking. We can write to our freeholders. I know I'll be doing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll give him a second.